I'm Andy Branch. I went here to BYU actually, and this is the first time I'm back in this building, and it's been 15, 16 years. So last time we were here, I didn't have this. So, but yeah, it's good to be back. And then this is my son, Ander, who's coming with me. My wife is sick tonight, so Ander's with me. He's been charged to save the world in Minecraft, so he's got a very important job. He probably won't say much. So I would like to, first off, just get to know you guys before I get into some spiel. I know Seth, I know Greg a little bit. For the rest of you, I'm not familiar with. Can you just tell me how many of you are students? I assume most of you. Hi, are you guys students?
Hi, yes.
Raise your hand, students. Who is not a student? Are you, and what are your, yes, tell me what you do.
I work with Seth.
Oh, cool, lucky man. That's a good guy.
I teach industrial design.
Great, cool. And,
I'm a civil engineer married to a teacher.
ah, lucky girl then. Great, cool. And so how many of you are wanting to be, are you, I know you probably get asked this every time someone comes to speak for you, but I'm curious, how many of you are interested in going into some form of product design? Okay. Related careers? What is it that's related? Or
Still
just something in that
just
vicinity?
something in that realm.
You're going that way.
Yeah.
Okay, what else? Any other type
We're all
of
graphic designers.
graphic design? Cool. With hopes of what? Going more visual design, maybe UX, who knows?
Yeah, maybe a combination.
Combination, seems like you kind of have to these days.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, that's great. Good to get to know you a little bit. So I'm going to tell you about me first, and then we can get into my spiel. As I told you, I came to BYU. I started in, I studied anthropology, actually. I assume no one here is in anthropology. I love anthropology. I still consider myself an armchair anthropologist. It's a great, you wouldn't, a lot of people don't, maybe it doesn't leap to their mind, but it is a great field to, or a great subject to study if you want to get into studying humans, because it's the study of humans, culture, and finding truths cross culture is very important to what I do every day. So it's been very valuable, and I would never knew for a million years that that's what I'd end up doing what I'm doing now as a result of my passion there. But it's interesting how life brings opportunities. So anyway, I'm glad that I found myself here though, because anthropologists make, I think, between 40 and 50 on average $1,000 a year, which is amazing. No, I'm really glad I'm not an anthropologist. That's not the career path that's going to make the big bucks. And that's not everything, but well, for me it is, but for some people it's not. What else? This is my family. You met my son Andrew, and this is us and our little baby camper that we like old things and restoring things. Me and my wife. This is an old camper that we didn't do all the work, but some of it. And then this is my other baby. Oh yeah, sure. Which I actually just sold, but I still show pictures because you show pictures of people who are dead, right? That you love. That's how I feel about this. And I keep the streets of Highland safe, with my Spider-Man gear. So yeah. And then what else? Me and my wife also do photography. Yep, we love to on the weekends and evenings. We're obsessed with photography. We do it anytime. In fact, we just were at a shoot earlier today before we came here. So we love to do that. A lot of couples, I think, at night will turn on the TV or whatever once the kids are in bed. We get straight on our computers, edit photos. We love it. We're obsessed with it. So that's another full-time job practically, but in addition to being parents and being a full-time UX person. But that's a little bit about me. Oh, also. RAIN, Agency American Fork, I talk highly about them because they got me my start. I came out of BYU and I started as a design agency at RAIN. And I'm really grateful for them. I ended up being able to be a part owner before they sold, a little part owner. But it was a great time. So, and then I did that for 10 years. And then now I am at rev.com. Rev is transcription translation kind of marketplace service, whatever agency. So we provide captioning, translations, subtitling, transcription services, kind of like the Uber model, where we have freelancers that do the work. So my job there, well, there are only 2 product designers there, and I do almost everything red. My counterpart, who also lives in Utah, does MathElf, which is a kind of a sister company. And we, but yeah, it's a startup in San Francisco, about 40 people. I'm a startup guy, I love startups. If you ever ask me for career advice, I'll tell you to go to a startup. And then, like Greg said, Front is a conference I help run with 2 others, Waitshare and Ben Peck. We do give, it's I think a $400 conference, but for students it's only $100. We really like to get students out. That's an incredible value. It's an amazing conference, and maybe I shouldn't say that as someone who runs it, but it is great. We've got some excellent speakers coming out. This is a sneak peek of the website. This actually isn't released yet. But and then Product Design Association. So yeah, that's the spiel. That's who I am. Let's talk about why you came, the stuff you wanted to see and why you came, and that is user testing. So the goals today are to talk about, first off, why it's important. I don't normally talk about that, but I will with you guys because I know that it's probably newer. You probably don't need to convince you that it's important, but I do want to give you some perspectives that you might not have considered. We'll talk about the skills and principles of a good user tester, what makes you good at that job, why, the qualities you need, etc. And then we'll showcase the tools you use. And that last one we may or may not get to. That's just to hear any ideas you have, because I'm always on the lookout for better tools. So that's the agenda. When it comes to why it's important, I had a boss once. It wasn't in either of the companies I just showed you, but he said this. He's something like this. This was pretty close to it. User research is just an excuse for bad UX to be perpetuated. And I don't work there anymore. That's one reason, because I did not agree with that statement at all. But it shows a perspective that's interesting. Some people have this perspective. In fact, a lot of entrepreneurs do, unfortunately, and people who have big ideas and that are really taken with their own ideas, who have egos associated with their ideas and their creations. A lot of times it's very difficult for those types of people to accept that there's somebody else's ideas are more important than their own, and that they don't necessarily have the answer to everything. On the other side of the scale is what I've had to learn to do. It wasn't necessarily easy for me because I'm very, very egotistical, a type A person, whatever. It's hard. Yeah, it takes a great deal of humility. And that is that when someone comes to you and asks for your expert, quote unquote, opinion, you will say, I'm not an expert. But I do consult with the experts, and that's the people who are using the product. And I know them really well, and I listen to them a lot. And I talk to them weekly. And if you can say that, then you're in a position to know what you're talking about. That does make you an expert retroactively, I guess. But other reasons why you'll hear a lot of talk about it. I used to be, I think early in my career, and I've seen this with a lot of product designers, early in your careers, you'll probably be like, oh yeah, testing is very important, and yes, I do test. But it's only every 3 months with the big stuff, right? It's like, okay, we've got this big product, let's do all this stuff, we'll get a prototype built, and we'll get it to this point, and that's when we'll do testing, right? We define the golden place on the project when we test. That's not the way to do testing, but that's the way that most people go into it. Because testing's hard, takes planning, and it's usually not why people get in the industry. Graphic designers, are you so excited to be in design because you can't wait to get people's opinions on your designs? Is that why you're doing it?
Yes.
No, I know it's not. Visual designers tend to not like too much feedback. That's why I say, and I can say that too because I also do visual design. And it's not pleasant to have someone rip apart your design. It's not. It's probably, Seth, you probably identified this also. It's coming from a visual design background primarily. It can be difficult, and it's hard to get to the point where you're thirsty. You want it. That's what you're trying to get, and it doesn't come naturally. It really doesn't. It's kind of like, I can say this because we're BYU. It's like charity, right? It's not something you just get. You have to learn how to gain it and have it, and that comes so hard. And in some ways, it's a gift. We can go on and on about that, but it's the same thing in user experience. Getting to know and love the people who use your products, as cheesy and corny as that sound, is absolutely essential. And so if you don't have that empathy and that love and that concern with them, that won't happen naturally. And you'll probably end up in those situations where you just have that one time in your project where you do testing. I hope that you get past that very quickly in your careers, that you're wanting and thirsting after that now. When we look for potential employees out of students, what we look for are people who are obsessed with, it's not good enough and I want more opinions. That's like number one. That's the biggest thing. When I met somebody who has that attitude, I don't care who they are, what their background is. I want them in UX because I know they'll be able to do it. An example of that is a U of U student we got who studied architecture. And he was an architect. He had his master's, he was in his field, and he decided he hated it. He heard about UX, didn't know anything about it. He came to me out of the blue because of my association with Product Design Association, and he asked, hey, how do I get in this career? And I said, well, I just started talking to him. I said, well, tell me about your process. Tell me about what you do, what makes you work. Show me your architecture portfolio, even though it has nothing to do, even though it's a different field. And I came away saying, yeah, you want a job? We'll hire you. This is when I was a hired you in Salt Lake, and we hired him. And his intern, he was only intern with me 4 or 5 weeks. And some of you may know him, Colton Bell. He's awesome. He's incredible. And then we hired him full time, even though his internship was supposed to be like 6 months. So that's the kind of person that you look to be and who you're looking to hire. Going too long on this subject, but hopefully you get a feel for. You just have to be obsessed with both the details and getting results from talking to people about them. And not just getting opinions, but getting actual people who use it. There's a difference. We'll talk more about that. Okay, does anyone heard the term qualitative versus quantitative? Is that something you guys are familiar with? Who's not? It's okay if you're not. I just want to know if I need to talk about it very much. Qualitative? Does anyone not know what I'm talking about when I say qualitative? User research. Promise? Okay, good. So we know the difference, that's good. Qualitative, quantitative. So if we know the difference between those, one thing you should know about qualitative research, actually I'm going to start on the next slide and come back. Let me talk about what you can't learn by doing qualitative research. Qualitative research will not tell you, okay, so a lot of times, let me actually back up. When you've got a stakeholder or an entrepreneur or your boss, and they want to know what color something should be, I have to be careful with this question. That's not a question you're going to be able to answer very easily with qualitative research. Qualitative research, usually, how many people do you interview with qualitative? Does the industry say? Anybody know what the ideal number is? Want to take a guess?
50.
Nope.
3 to 5.
5 is the magic number. According to Nielsen, what's his first name? Jacob. Yes. Oh. Yes, he says it should be 5. I do 6 because sometimes
You're overachiever.
yeah, well, that, and sometimes someone's high. I don't know, it's a throwaway test. There's outliers. I do 6. But yes, that qualitative, 6 people. Quantitative, that's the 344, 400. That's the level you're at if you want to get statistical relevancy. And I'm not a statistician, and I'm not a market researcher, so I can't talk much about quantitative. That's a different world. And it's great if you're in product marketing, but I don't know much about it. But what I can tell you is qualitative won't answer that question. What color should it be? What font should we use? It doesn't necessarily tell you aesthetic things. You won't get it out. You can pretend, right? I mean, let me give you an example. There was I need to figure out where I read this, but basically. Somebody decided they wanted to find what the funniest joke was. This was a university, and again, I'm embarrassed that I can't tell you the exact word, as it just kind of reminded me of it. They wanted to figure out what the funniest joke in the world was. So how would you research that? What do you think? What would you do if you wanted to learn what the funniest joke in the world was? it assumes, first off, that there is one, right? That there is such thing as the funniest joke in the world. Is that a thing? I don't think they asked the right question, right? Yeah, what do you think? What's your name?
Kyle.
Kyle. Yeah.
You kind of have to ask like what your measure of the funny is, right? Is it like the level of volume as people laugh to it? Is it, I don't know, it's like, does it go viral? Anyways, you have to come up with like your measure of why.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm not sure if they did that or not. I give them the benefit of the doubt because they're at university, but what they did learn that the funniest joke in the world, and I don't know how they derived it, quote unquote funniest joke in the world. I think that the way they did it though was just pure numbers. Rate this on a scale of 1 to 7. They always like to use 7 as those quantitative folks. Rate it on a scale of 1 to 7. Which of these jokes is funny? I don't know, something like that probably. But what they got was one of those dumb man walks in a bar type jokes. And I heard it, I was like, I mean, it's okay. It's like type funny, right? To me. But maybe the majority of white males who took the survey, over the age of 30, whatever, thought that was the funniest one on the list, so therefore it's the funniest joke in the world. The point I'm getting at, and the point of the author of the study was that when it comes to something's desirability in aesthetic form, when it comes to how pretty something is, how much you like it, and have an affinity for it, that is so subjective that it's not something you can get by surveying. Because what you get, the result of that is average. It will always be average. It'll be okay for everybody. Yeah.
It'll always be blue.
It'll always be blue, is that right?
Yeah, all the surveys always picture blue.
Yeah. So do you ask those questions, Seth?
No, I've seen them.
You've seen them asked, and you've probably had people ask you to ask them.
Yeah.
What do you tell them?
Basically this.
Yeah. That you can't answer
Let's measure something else.
Exactly. And let's let a smart designer who has a track record of doing beautiful, award-winning even things by a subjective committee because there is, what else are you going to measure? If they're a good designer, quote unquote. Well, if they have a track record of being a good designer, let them do their job. I almost said it, naughty BYU word. But it's, you don't get in that designer's way unless it comes to things you can measure and evaluate against each other in a way that gets you, qualitative. So for instance, okay, so that's the first thing. You cannot measure perceived value of visual design and aesthetics in any reliable way. And what ends up happening usually is that whoever's doing the test will use the anecdotal evidence to support their own desires. That's what happens. And so maybe you want to use that. If you want to get your way, fine, okay. You're the designer. I like using, chartreuse. So I'm going to tell them that, I really like that 4 people said this about chartreuse, so I'm going to present those findings or whatever. But basically, it's worthless. It's throw away. Don't ask those questions. So an example is when we were doing our Math Elf. You go to mathelf.com. It's our tutoring line kind of services. The logo was the big question. And logo, sir, as Seth will tell you, very difficult to get to something because you're going to get a lot of opinions, and if you take the average of all those opinions, what you'll end up with is something average. So that's not what we did. We approached it different. I'm not going to talk about that tonight because that is not the point of this. If you want to talk about it more, especially your visual designers, I'd love to talk to you more about it later. So what you also can't learn is what people have done in the past. At least not by asking them. Meaning, you can rely on data to learn what people have done in the past, but if you ask them, you won't get an accurate answer. Examples being, if you're asking someone, how many hours a week do you spend doing X project? What types of stuff are you guys doing? Projects are you building? What are you designing? Are you all kind of on a similar track, those of you that are students? Is anyone doing like a thing that's like I see a huge iPhone back there.
I do mobile.
Okay. So an example of a mobile apps, you mean? You do mobile
apps,
designs, okay? What kind of projects? Or is it for like functional, or like is it tools, or is it?
I guess it depends. Because there's like school projects, and another thing I'm working on is kind of like a tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to know, for instance, I talked to a student recently who was trying to do a grocery store app to help people be as efficient as possible inside a grocery store. I'm not going to talk to you about the merits or non-merits of the idea itself, but only to say that that's what his idea was. That I basically can log in this app, align to the grocery store, I can get to what I need very quickly. That was the idea. So you could ask the question to someone who you're interviewing, how often do you go to the grocery store? When you're at the grocery store, how do you peruse the grocery store? You can ask people who shop those sorts of questions. You will not get what they really do. And that's not because the person's lying to you or trying to be deceitful. It's because we don't do that as humans. We don't store that information very well, right? We can't regurgitate what we did minute by minute, hour by hour. We have this filter, right? And if you go to look more in the behavioral and the cognitive science of psychology, there's also obviously a lot of research behind this, but the point is those questions will not get you close to truth of what that person really does. What will is actual behavior and data. So qualitative research does not study or ask those questions. It shouldn't, it doesn't, because that won't help you at all. It really won't. It's arbitrary, really. Does that make sense? It might as well be throwing a dart in a dartboard, because you're not going to get data that you can use. What's more valuable is to use actual analytics of their behavior or follow them around the grocery store. So I guess that can be considered a type of qualitative, but it's not the interview. So don't ask the questions in interviews. What users do in a same thing, hypotheticals, just avoid them. What would you do with this? I mean, sometimes you just have no other way to get closer to an idea. You kind of have to, but they should be avoided. And then finally, whether users will buy or use it. This is the golden question, right? That you're, if you have a product someday, that you're an entrepreneur and you're going to build your own product, if you have an app that you're going to build yourself and try to sell yourself, you will be tempted to ask this question. And you will ask this, but you probably, how many of you have asked this question? I know I have, so I can not be ashamed to admit it. Would you buy this app if it was working right now? How many of you have asked that? Okay. The reason that that's a bad question is that they don't really know if they would or not, and you can't trust them to be able to answer that question. There's a better way to find that out. The lean customer development movement started in Silicon Valley answers this question a lot better, and that's by asking, what are you doing right now? What are your current behaviors? Are they trying to solve a similar problem that you're creating a solution to? Are they spending time, resources, or money to try to find a solution to that? Are they wasting their time already or spinning their wheels or just not being as efficient as they could be? Then chances are, if you make them more efficient with an app, they'll probably spend money to get it. That you can bet that they probably will. That's a good indication. But if they're not, if you have a good idea and it's kind of a destructor type thing, it's gonna say, I've heard app ideas like this all the time, and I'm sure you've had them and heard them. People will say, I want to create a product that does this for moms, and they'll all use it even though they don't do anything like this right now. And a lot of them will be so excited they'll tell you they want to. Like, yeah, I would totally get that, I'd totally buy that. I would totally download and use this app. Had a buddy who built this game. Everybody he talked to, friends and not friends, said, yeah, I totally get that. Now, it was a flop because nobody was actively trying to solve the problem that he solved through his, it was more than a game, it was actually a tool that was a mix of the game. But anyway, the point is, if they're not already doing it, chances are they won't. Now, there are exceptions to that rule, but that's a pretty good rule when it comes to whether someone will actually use it. And so qualitative research will not answer that question unless it's contextual inquiry, which is a slightly different thing. And that's observing their behavior. That's anthropology. That's not the survey. That's not me asking you what you're doing, but it's witnessing, it's observing it. Does that make sense? Or have I just confused people? What questions do you have at this point that you're stumbled upon or that's bouncing around? Yeah.
I just want to kind of add on this, that passive data collection, like you said, following around the store is a lot more true to what, this is exactly what you're saying. But we've noticed too with apps that people can create some great apps, and that all it requires them to do is enter this information and enter this information every day. Those apps fail all day long because it's not what you're talking about here. It has to be something that they can do passively. They can do the work for them.
And that brings in a new field that's starting to bud. It kind of is a sub, or I guess it's more in the behavioral psychology realm, which is habit design. Have you ever heard of habit design? Yeah. And Michael Kim in San Francisco is one of the big we've had him speak out here at one of our events. And that stuff is cool. And that's all about solving those problems. When you have a solution that requires data entry every day, a lot of it's health related, right? It's, I'm doing calorie counters. I've tried like 4 of those, and maybe like a few weeks each in my life, and I can't keep doing that.
Passive thing before you go like step counting and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly, or design a habit around it, and that's a little more difficult, but possible. That's a different subject, but yeah, absolutely, that's, are they already doing it? That's the question you need to ask. And there's other ways to ask it. You wouldn't necessarily ask that in a survey, or sitting down interviewing someone, which is what we're talking about right now. What you can learn though, and this is what I love trust way more than I love aesthetics. I focus on trust, and I focus on whether they feel like the app is going to do what they need it to do. That's a good question that you can ask in a qualitative interview and grab hold of. And that will also bring up design issues. They'll bring up design issues related to trust, but then that's reliable. So we had a big debate at HireView over with me and some of the product owners on the look and feel of something. And this happens all the time. Somebody has an opinion. They don't like this color. They don't like this button. They like this layout better. And the way to answer those questions is not by asking people what they like or don't like in a survey, because that will give you nowhere. Likes and dislikes are not important. I don't care what my users like and dislike. I mean, I care kind of, but I'm not going to ask them, really, because it's not going to help me. But what I do ask is, and observe. Observation is more powerful. I'll see if they like it, if it's doing what they need it to do or not. And I'll discover if they like it, if the likes will be there, if they can trust it. If they feel like, I love asking questions like, when you click this button, or when you are about to start, what do you think it's going to do? And do you trust it? Is there anything here that you don't trust to do what you need it to do? What makes you think, or what causes you to doubt that this product will be there for when you need it to do what you need it to do? Stuff like that. Does that make sense? That can get you very quickly to the answers. And then if it's blue or red, it doesn't really matter. You know, it matters to somebody, but that should be somebody who's designated to make those decisions in a creative way. Anyway, but red and blue can, if it gets in their way. I don't trust it because it's distracting. I don't trust it because I can't read the text very well. That's different, right? That is usability, and that's not a question of aesthetics at that point. And that's the next one, quality of usability. You can measure usability. If we have time, we'll talk about, you can actually measure this with system usability. Write this down in case we don't get to it. System usability scale. How many of you have used SUS, the SUS score? System usability scale. It's been around for a little while, but it's getting more traction in UX recently. What about NPS? Anyone heard of that? And I'm blanking on what NPS stands for. Because I don't do that as much. UX uses a lot of times to evaluate whether a product is or is not usable.
Is NPS Net Promoter Score?
Yes, that's it. Thank you. Appreciate that. Net Promoter Score is something you'll hear a lot more in the industry. It's very well known in the. I mean, we use it all the time religiously, and most startups will. That tells you if someone really is. That is a quantitative survey, right? You send that out to a huge number of people, and they respond to, would I recommend this to a friend or not? And that answer will tell you if it's valued or not. NPS is how we measure most startups. But system usability scales, the SUS, is a little lesser known, but it's more in the human factors realm of things. And I'll show you that if we have time. But the reason I bring it up is because you can measure this. You can measure usability, very reliable with not very many people. I mean, when we do system usability scales, we do it with 20 people and it's reliable, which is very different than a lot of other surveys that require larger numbers of statistical relevancy. Okay. Oh, that I didn't mention. The last one is the problems that users will face. That's probably the biggest, is you'll find that where people have hang-ups in your app. And that's what we can learn from qualitative. So again, can, can't. Push back on the visual design side of things for qualitative. And yeah, that's hard to do sometimes, but it's the right thing to do. All right, so now let's talk about having the right participants when you go to interview people. So we said already that 5 to 6 is an ideal number. We used to do 12. That used to be the standard. So I would do these, and that's one reason why people had this idea that, oh, it's user testing time. It's like my week is just going to be dedicated to this. It's going to be this big thing. I got to fly places. That's how it used to be. It used to be a big old pain. It's not like that anymore. You can do it so quickly. You can do 3 a week, and it doesn't take much time at all. I'm going to show you how and why that should be a habit. It just should be part of everything you do every week, and you need to change that perspective. But the right participants, this goes back to what we were talking about, or I was talking about a little while ago about, will people buy it? Remember, they're only going to buy it if they're already trying to solve a problem, most likely. Now, there are exceptions to that, but I'm not going to get into those. But most likely, they won't buy it unless they're already trying to find a solution to that. And they're expending time, resources, money. So similarly, the right person, it used to be, well, it still is. Most people will think, I'm going to do a study. So if you're going to do a study on one of your iPhone apps, what's your target demographic? Tell me about your favorite one and what your target demographic is. Is Kyle, was that what you said?
Yeah. One of them is the medical field. So it's for, PMs. What's
Product managers or project?
It's no.
Or medical, I don't know.
It's in the medical, anyway, the practitioners.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like nurse practitioners or just?
Like the doctor.
Oh,
or
doctor.
whatever, yeah.
So doctors are your demographic.
Yeah.
Okay. So most doctors, we're talking, most of them seem to be men between 30, 50. That's like what you guess, right? Highly educated, and 150, 250, 300,000 a year salaries. That's your demographic data, right? And so then you go, okay, all right, research people. And if you're in a company that has dedicated research people, I need 5 doctors who are males between 30 and 50, who make between 150 and 350,000 a year, who are blah, 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 right? You give them the demographic information. That's what typically you do. But I'm here to tell you that that is not the best way to do it. It's a way. And there's an even worse way that's it's becoming more and more popular in UX land. And that's, I'm going to go to the mall, and I'm going to talk to some people. That's cool. I mean, it's fine. It's better than nothing, right? I'm not trying to distract from that, because you want to create a culture of involvement and of observation in your company. And you want to have that desire. So I don't want to dish on that too much. But what I'm going to tell you is that and I did have a researcher tell me this once, and I use it. He said, you might as well throw a dart at a dartboard if you're trying to get meaningful answers to some of these questions if you don't have the right person in front of you. So what is the right person? Well, another thing, so I can keep going on this. I had to retrain some of the staff at where I work at Rev on this very thing, because they were using some tools that just got them people. They just needed warm bodies, right, to give them feedback on logos. And I always point out, you guys want to talk about design. I like visual design stuff. But it's, that's what they were like, I need a warm body to just respond to this. Great, that's better than nothing. Sure, ask your mom. It's better than nothing. And I think it's better that you're doing something than nothing at all. Even if it's borderline arbitrary, at least you're seeking for empathy. But the thing about asking your mom and your friends is that they're going to be nice to you usually. And they just have such built-in bias and family history with you that it's not going to, it's going to bring in a lot of stuff that's not necessarily going to inform you as good as it could. So what will? The answer is the same question we answered earlier, will they buy it? It's, are they now expending time, resources, money on this solution that you're trying to solve? That's who you want in front of you. And that's really all there is to it. It used to be way more complicated for me, but now it's not. Let me give you an example. At Rev, I told you we have freelancers who do our work. They're all over the country. Some of them are at BYU, and they do. I just lost my train of thought. A lot of them are stay-at-home. Either they're students who need flexible jobs, or most of them actually are stay-at-home moms who want some way to make money when their kids are asleep or at school. And so for the vast majority of people doing transcription for us, that's who they are. And so you could say, the temptation to say, what's our target demographic, quote unquote? Moms with 3 kids, right? Stay at home. Salaries are pretty low. They're looking for extra income. That's your little persona, and that's going to form who you get, right? And you think, I have the right person in front of me. Well, I did that right, to my shame. I did that right when I first started at Rev. That's how I would target people. I would target them that way and get the right participants. So I would ask people, hey, I get on Facebook, and it's easy in Utah. Hey, I just need some stay-at-home moms who you know, blah, 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 you know, or between this age and this age. And I got all the people in the world. I got more people than you could shake a stick at that were interested in me paying them $15 for a half-hour interview. It was easy. But was that and I realized this very soon, is some of those stay-at-home moms, never in the world would they want a job on the computer doing transcription. They would just not want to do it. And was that the right person for me to be talking to? No, no way. Absolutely not. Was it better than my mom? Yeah, probably. Was it better than my brother? Yes, absolutely. But it's not as good as it could be. So what's a better way? And now all I do, and it's just as easy, I get on Craigslist in the stay-at-home whatever work gig section. I say, hey, are you interested in making money from home? This is not a scam, it's legit. Here's a link to my LinkedIn portfolio. Here's where I work. This is legitimate. I can pay you a little bit of money to talk about what you do to make money at home. I get lots and lots of people that way too, but they're the right people. And most of those people, if they aren't already doing some sort of job like transcription at home, at the end of our call, they go and they apply for Rev to be a freelancer. That's the sign that I had the right person. And I'm not there to try to recruit them. There are other people who do that. That's a nice little side perk. But what it does tell me is I had the right person in front of me. Absolutely the right person. So that's the right person. Okay. How are we doing on time? What do you want me to end?
5, yeah.
5 what?
5 minutes.
5 minutes? Are you kidding? Okay, so this is part 1. Next month we'll do part 2. Yeah, these are the wrong participants. There's so much stuff. Interview guide. What can I tell you? Let me just go through the 2 lists, 4 lists. Best practices. It's all about expectations when you're sitting down with somebody and they're looking at your stuff. It's all about expectations. Meaning, before they do anything in this, I stop them and I say, okay, I'm going to show you this. So I get ready to show it to them. I say, I don't want you to click on anything yet. If it's a piece of paper, if it's a prototype online, if I'm on a call with them, don't click on anything just yet. Soon I'll let you go crazy on it. But right now, I just want you to look at it. And I want to ask you a few questions about expectations. So when they get in, I first start with very general, and then I go more specific. Questions like, okay, the very first question is just talk. What do you think? Here it is, just talk. I want to hear their first reactions, and that could be anything. I want to hear what they're thinking. It could be visual related. If it is, a lot of times I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I don't know if I care that you don't like chartreuse. Or that Pantone color. But then I'll go more specific, and those questions are things like, do you trust it or not? What don't you trust about this? What is distracting? If there's iconography or metaphors, I'll have them tell me what they think they are. That's so valuable. These are questions you'll never get again. You'll never be able to ask again once they've clicked on them. Once they see the tooltip hover over button, you can never get that moment back. You can never find out what they thought that button did, ever. Even because you can't ask hypotheticals or expect them to remember with any degree of reliability, remember? I can't ask them, oh, what did you think that was, by the way? It's too late. They can't answer that question very well. I mean, it still is probably better than nothing, like I said before, but there's good, better, best. And best is to ask them before they click on it what their expectations are. The other thing is that I'm looking at anywhere in the app where they struggle. and that's the next point, don't be too quick to come to the rescue because you learn so much. In anthropology, we call it rich points. When two cultures collide and they don't understand each other, why do Americans sit down to poo? That's weird, right? Or why do, when cultures don't get each other, that's just language, that's anything. We call that a rich point. Why? Because there's assumptions on both sides, and that's what we study in anthropology. What are the assumptions that aren't gelling? Same thing here. What assumptions did I have as the designer? What assumptions did they have as a user, and where are they not meeting? That is everything that we're trying to do in the app. That's what we're trying to learn when we do qualitative testing. So when they say, oh, interesting, if I hear them say interesting, rich point. What's interesting? And I don't just leave it at there, because a lot of times I used to do this, where it's just like, okay, that's cool. They told me what was interesting, but what's most important is to say, well, what did you think it was going to do? What that gets you is, so another university a while back, I need to look up, I keep thinking, I gotta go back and remember who this was. But just like, cougars don't cut, right? Do you still say that here? Yeah, my mom said that back in the, turn of the century. Whenever she went to BYU too, they said it back then. But the point is, right, somebody designed the grass bunny, if you're tempted to cross it, in my opinion, right? I mean, because they got the sign, I even saw it on the way in here, right? Don't walk on the grass here, we spend a lot. Well, this university had a good idea, and that's what they took all the pavement up and they just laid grass. And then they got, after a semester, a few weeks, they took an aerial photo of where the students walked. And they said, oh, okay, that informed. Now, you can go too far with this. They could have said, okay, that's where the sidewalks are. And then it's not visually appealing, because visually appealing is important, right? Even though it's hard to measure it, it's still important. Someone who has design sense needs to make an informed decision. People need to get behind it. I know I've said that a lot tonight. But, so you can't just scrap all that, and otherwise you have Excel, right? That's what you get. You get all form, all function, no form. But anyway, I guess where I'm getting at with that is that's what we're doing in usability studies. There's so many times I've discovered that someone's trying to use a feature in a different way than what it was intended, and that is so cool, because you have a choice at that point. Well, there's three things you could do. You could either make it look more like what it was supposed to do, and so they can't do it, and they know that they're not supposed to. Oh, okay, that looks more like what it's supposed to do by experimentation and more testing. Two, you could say, they're right and I'm wrong. That's what it should do. Or three, you should say, not only is that what it's supposed to do, but we don't want those customers to even think that it can. Those are different, thank you. Those are different strategies and handling it. But that is a rich point, and that is how you deal with it. Okay, so I let them struggle. If they're not getting something, I don't be like, engineers are terrible at this. They'll get on and be like, oh, let me help you through it. Oh, this is what you need to do. I just watch them, and I'm like, you know what? And sometimes I'll even tell them, like, I know this is hard, but I want to watch. And not only that, but I'm usually recording it because I want my boss to see it. I want the product managers to see it because they need to understand what you're going through here. And so I'm sorry, but I'm going to see how long it takes you to figure this out. Sometimes maybe they can't figure it out at all. But eventually they will. And that's data I can use. It took the average user that I interviewed 5 minutes to find a solution to this. That's not good enough. That's powerful data that you can take back to a stakeholder. That's really powerful. Don't be so quick to answer questions. Oh gosh, when people ask you things, don't answer questions. Ask them what they think. Always, that's my first reaction, is will this do X, or can it do this? I said, well, what do you think? What's your expectation? What do you think it should do? What do you think it would do? I'll still answer them eventually, but I try to get them to I want to hear what their assumptions are. Never, ever, ever, ever correct them. They're never wrong. They cannot be wrong. You are wrong. The software is wrong if they don't get it, because you haven't designed it in a way that they could know that they were wrong. Or, but the danger in correcting them, even if it's a simple thing, if they say, oh, that's what this can do, I see, and they're wrong, that happens a lot, that's not what it does, I don't tell them. I don't jump in and say, no, that's not what it does something else. I want to see when it occurs to them later that they were wrong, and what happens when they do that. So there's subtle things like that in observation. Don't correct them, avoid questions about license types. We already talked about that. Okay, last list, and then, gosh, I just skipped so many slides. Other things, these are kind of what I'll wrap up on. Obviously, you don't want to manipulate them. Don't you think this? I will tell you, it is so easy. You have so much power in a company if you're the person in charge of doing research, because you have so much anecdotal evidence is the most powerful way. Data is one thing, but data is boring. You can present numbers, and people will, oh, okay, interesting. Some people are data geeks, especially a lot of startup people, but if you can show them a video, that is so powerful. But you have to be so careful with that, because you could take the one outlier out of the 5 that you interviewed that said this one thing that you liked because it's your secret agenda. That would, you know what I mean, basically skew the data. So last couple things, keep them talking when they trail off. I'll restate what they say. If they say, oh, that's interesting that, ... I'll say, that's interesting that, and then they'll finish it. Last thing I'll say, avoid the temptation to defend the software. If this product manager struggle with this too. If they say, listen, or if they ask, when is this feature coming out? Or if they say, it should do this, and the product manager knows that next week it's going to happen, they'll usually say, oh, that's coming. And the reason I say avoid that is because that teaches your person that they don't have to think anymore, that they can shut off and not be creative because you're doing the thinking for them. So it's not necessarily bad in and of itself, but it is bad for them that they won't be as creative. So that's it. That's part 1. You want everyone to love to come back. But thanks. If you have any questions, we can be here a while.